Good evening. The hour of 6:30 having arrived, I will call to order this regular meeting of the Zoning Board of Adjustment. This meeting is being broadcast live on the City of Keene YouTube channel and the city website. The video is also posted on the city website by the end of the next business day, barring any technical difficulties. Anyone wishing to view a copy of the agenda and supporting materials will find it on the city website. To receive electronic copies of future agenda packets, please go to the homepage and subscribe to the City Meetings email list. The public and other board members will be recognized to ask questions and make comments on the agenda item under discussion. After being recognized, all remarks are to be made through the chair. Anyone who wishes to address the board is asked to go to one of the microphones in the room and identify themselves by name and address prior to speaking. As a reminder, the minute taker is participating remotely this evening. Board members, please be sure to turn on your microphone when speaking, and if the minute taker is unable to hear, they will ask that you speak louder or turn your microphone on. Our first action is to commence a roll call, please.
Richard Clow.
Here.
Edward Guyot. Here. Tad Schrantz.
Here.
Adam Burke.
Here.
Zach Leroy.
Here.
We do have one available voting position this evening, Mr. Chairman.
I would like to invite Mr. Leroy to join us as a full voting member for the remainder of the meeting, please. All right, our first thing is the minutes of the previous meeting. This actually says July, but we know that that was in August, actually.
It actually is the July 7th minutes.
Oh, the July 7th minutes on? Mm-hmm. Okay. All right, so does anyone have anything to ask or add or comment on regarding the minutes? All right, do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
And a second? That was a motion by Mr. Schrantz and seconded by Mr. Burke. All those in favor of approving the minutes signify aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? And an abstention?
I'll abstain because I was not present.
Mr. Guyot is abstaining. Thank you. All right, moving to our actually unfinished business. Do we have any unfinished business? All right. Moving to our first hearing. This is a continued ZBA 2025-07. Petitioner Kevin Barella of Colonial Theater requesting a variance for property located at 95 Main Street, tax map number 575-008-000-000, and is in the downtown core district. The petitioner is requesting a variance to permit an electronically activated changeable copy sign per Article 10.3 of the zoning regulations. Could we hear from city staff first, please?
I believe we have some recusals, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to recuse myself from the hearing for the Colonial. I was a participant with the Colonial when they did the renovation a few years ago, and part of that renovation discussion and proposition was to go ahead and apply for the sign change, so I feel like I need to recuse myself.
Noted.
I'm also going to recuse myself. I'm an active board member for the Colonial Theater.
All right. Well, gentlemen, you may take a seat in the audience. So at this point, I will point out the fact that we only have 3 members on the board, but since that is also our total number for the board, it is up to the Colonial to decide whether they wish to continue tonight or postpone for another time.
I think we'd like to continue on.
All right. Then let's hear from city staff, please.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Evan Clements, planner. The subject property at 95 Main Street is located on the western side of Main Street across the street from the Modest Man Brewing and contains the Colonial Theater with a marquee sign located on the building facade above the main entrance of the theater. The marquee sign in its current configuration is a manual changeable copy sign, is a permitted type of sign that is allowed in the downtown core zoning district. The Colonial Theater, originally the site of the Reverend Nathaniel Sprague's home and schoolroom, The house was sold to Samuel Dismore and later to Latin Martin, who operated the Colonial Inn on this site. In 1923, Charles Baldwin constructed the present structure as a Vanderlel movie house, and the Colonial Theater was opened on January 29, 1924. Over the years, the Colonial Theater continues to play an important role in Keane's cultural life and movie showings, live performances, and cultural activities. The purpose of this application is to seek approval to replace the manual changeable copy sign on the marquee with an electronically activated changeable copy sign. The applicant originally came before the board back in January of 2022, meeting and received approval for the same variance request that they are before you this evening. The variance has since expired as the project was not able to move forward in time. The applicant has indicated that they are now prepared to move forward with this project and are seeking reapproval of the variance request. Included in the staff report are some definitions in the Land Development Code related to changeable copy signs and what a marquee sign is. Just reiterating that electronically activated changeable copy signs are prohibited in all zoning districts within the city. If the board is inclined to approve this request, the following language is recommended, specifically the following condition, which is the same condition that the previous variance was approved upon. And that condition is the sign shall not be used to display animated or flashing images or text. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Would the applicant like to come up to the microphone, please?
These two here.
Yes, please.
Hello, my name is Keith Marks. I'm the executive director at the Colonial and Showroom.
And I'm Kevin Barella. I'm the facilities manager at the Colonial and Showroom.
So if you'd like to go through the criteria that we would have to discuss, that might be an easy way to present your application. Certainly, or you can read and summarize if you so wish.
All right. Can you hear me? First section is section 3, written narrative. Describe the property location, owner of the subject property, and explain the purpose and effect and justification for the proposed variance. The Colonial Theater, as part of a historic downtown district, has had a distinctive marquee sign for more than half a century. There are 3 major components to this marquee: the red neon channel letters spelling out the name of the venue, the backlit copy board with black exchangeable letters listing events and other content, and the many small incandescent bulbs which illuminate the classic chase along the marquee's length. Of these 3 elements, one stands out as an opportunity for improvement: the backlit copy board, which displays upcoming events, sponsor recognitions, community messages, and other opportunities for our constituents. The Colonial Performing Arts Center, owners of the establishment, propose a replacement of the backlit copy board with an internally illuminated, electronically changeable copy board on both sides of the marquee. This would consist of a custom manufactured display utilizing full LED lights housed in the weatherproof black panels, interconnecting to fill the same space and dimensions occupied by the existing copy boards. This new copy board would match and not exceed the overall brightness of the current copy board's backlighting. The intended benefits of this new copy board are threefold. 1, replacement of outdated elements such as wiring, lamp sockets, and rusted metal within the frame of the current copy board. This has great value in preserving the longevity of our marquee. 2, removing potential life safety hazards, especially during winter months, to our employees. Currently, the sign letters are changed and rearranged manually, doing so either by climbing a ladder or with a spring-loaded extension pole. In either case, both employees and pedestrians may be at risk of injury. The new proposed copy board requires no physical intervention to change copy. 3, the proposed electronic copy board is meant to be part of a greater project to revitalize the Colonial Theater as a modern performing arts center. While nearly all of the historic elements inside and outside the building remain, the Colonial Performing Arts Center sees immense value in supplementing these elements with safer, modern, forward-thinking, and energy-efficient additions. Unlike the outdated copyboard with its very limited 2 lines of copy and 23 characters per line, an upgraded board would allow us to present more detailed and frequently updated information about our programming, more robust exposure for the business, individuals, and nonprofit partners that support or are engaged in the arts in our region, and provide a welcoming and informative billboard for visitors who may be unfamiliar with all the theater that the greater Keene community has to offer. Application criteria. Number 1, granting the variance would not be contrary to the public interest because the Colonial Theater, and in particular the marquee on the theater, has been a longstanding landmark in the city of Keene. The marquee is an important part of the history of the theater that serves as an integral piece of Keene and its downtown streetscape. Maintaining the sign in its historic configuration while providing much-needed upgrades to make it safer for the theater, as well as improved signage technology in line with today's theater standards, will allow the Colonial and the marquee to remain the landmark that it has become in the vibrant part of the Keene community. The proposed sign improvements maintain the historic configuration of the marquee while allowing for improved wayfinding for patrons and visibility for sponsors and others. It is clear that given the minor nature of the proposed improvements to the marquee and the long-standing presence of the marquee in downtown Keene, granting the variance will not alter the essential character of the neighborhood nor threaten public health, safety, or welfare. Number 2, if the variance were granted, the spirit of the ordinance would be observed because the Colonial Theater marquee is a historic landmark, an integral part of the Keene streetscape, and a valuable contribution to the history on Main Street. The configuration, shape, and size of the marquee structure will not change. The configuration, size, and shape of the lit area for signage will not change. The only change will be the technology utilized to light and create the signage area. With this change to create a more safe and energy-efficient sign, the new signage area will resemble the existing sign in shape and size, observing the spirit of the ordinance. Number 3, granting the variance would do substantial justice because the Colonial Theater marquee is in a current state of disrepair. As a good partner of the community, the Colonial believes it is important to provide the much-needed repairs at this time for several reasons. No major repairs have been done to the sign for multiple decades. The wiring is confirmed to be from the previous mid-century. The lighting fixtures are of the same time frame, and replacement parts are no longer available. Improvements making the sign electrically safe and efficiently operational are justified. Additionally, the existing sign requires staff members to manually change letters for upcoming events. Since most of the Colonial events occur during fall, winter, and spring months, this adds undue risk of a fall or injury to the employees. The sign will eliminate the need for ladder access and will allow all employees of any mobility to change the sign remotely from controls within the theater in a safe and efficient manner. Given these circumstances, it's clear the Colonial Theater and the downtown area are benefited by granting the variance. Keith's turn.
If the variance were granted, the values of the surrounding properties would not be diminished because the Colonial Performing Arts Center is investing in a substantial renovation and addition project thanks to the generosity of the Keene community. This work is being done to position the Colonial to remain as an important anchor to the downtown environment for the next generation. Colonial shows 50,000 plus people bring 50,000 plus people to downtown each year, which supports restaurants, retail, and other surrounding businesses. The improvement of the marquee sign will enable the Colonial to remain highly relevant and improve its standing in the community, which will in turn support the surrounding properties and businesses for decades to come. Unnecessary hardship. Owing to special conditions of the property that distinguish it from other properties in the area, denial of the variance would result in unnecessary hardship because I, no fair and substantial relationship exists between the general public purpose of the ordinance provision and the specific application of that provision to the property because Repairs and improvements to the marquee will only enhance the Colonial Theater's positive impact on the neighborhood and community. The intent of the zoning ordinance is to encourage property owners to maintain and upgrade their properties to ensure a vibrant downtown. And two, the proposed use is a reasonable one because, given the unique and special conditions of this property, the last remaining historic theater in Keene and a major local and regional landmark as well, the proposed variance is reasonable. B, explain how, if the criterial in subparagraph A are not established, an unnecessary hardship will be deemed to exist, and only if, owing to special conditions of that property that distinguish it from other properties in the area, the property cannot be reasonably used in the strict conformance with the ordinance, and a variance is therefore necessary to enable a reasonable use of it. Given the unique and special conditions of this property, it is the only historic theater in Keene and is a recognized landmark as well. The proposed variance is reasonable in seeking to upgrade the marquee to incorporate modern technology while retaining its historic charm.
Thank you. So at this point, the board, if you have questions for the applicant, feel free to go ahead.
I do. The original restriction in the first variance that was granted talked about restricting animation on the marquee. Can you define that for me, what animation, how it was defined, and how does that contrast to the intended use of the upgraded marquee now? I'm presuming the marquee will scroll across, messaging, and as it changes, maybe you can describe how it's going to operate in terms of its appearance from people observing it from the street.
So our intent is that there would be static images. I mean, perhaps the transitions between the image have some sort of movement. Obviously, there's no, you can't put up a placard or a blocker to get to the next image. But the intent is not to have ongoing animation, moving images while in use. The idea is that there would be static images to promote, support business sponsors and shows and community partnerships.
Great, thank you.
Can I follow up with that a little bit? How often would those signs be changing? I'm assuming you're going to want to promote events, right? Like right now, you're going to have the next event, and it's going to be there until the next event's over. How often would that marquee be changing to promote other events?
We haven't necessarily laid out the exact time frame. I mean, a block of time of 30 minutes maybe per static image. I mean, I don't see it being a rapid succession of shifting and changing icons in rapid succession.
Right, but we're just trying to get back to the definition of animated and flashing images and how that's defined. Because my concern long term has nothing to do with the Colonial and personally, it's just the precedent it's going to set for the rest of Keene and Main Street.
We've got a representative from Sousa here from Watchfire as well, the actual LED company. He could speak to the transitions if you would like.
Sure, love to hear what you have to say.
Certainly.
Hello, my name is Ed Kenny. I'm with Watchfire Signs. We're based out of Danville, Illinois, and we're the manufacturer of the electronic message center. So just to speak to transitions, static versus blinking, flashing, scrolling, so as well as how often the message changes. So the message center is set up so it won't blink, flash, or have long scrolling text, which is usually a concern in a municipality. The change from one message to another is seamless, so you'll have one static image. It'll either change in an instant or will kind of fade out and then fade back in, whichever the town deems is more acceptable. As far as message hold times, that's all custom, so if there's a minimum hold time that the town would like, usually for the speed of traffic in downtown and everything, you're looking, maybe an 8-second or a 10-second hold time. Again, that can be adjusted to conform to whatever the municipality would like. I also just want to point out that the sign will automatically dim throughout the day. So when it's bright and sunny out, it'll run on 100% brightness. As it gets into twilight and nighttime, it dims down to 10% of its total brightness. So it's not too bright. It's not an eyesore. It doesn't look like Las Vegas downtown. It automatically dims the ambient light. And this is all controlled by Watchfire. They're not settings that can be overridden by the theater. So there's no real concern as far as someone being able to go in and override that setting and have messages blink, flash, scroll, change the brightness levels at night or whatnot.
So, this is Ed Guyot. Going to your comment about the automatic dimming,
Yeah.
that implies to me at least that at night, the new sign will be less bright than the current marquee. At least the readable
I mean,
part.
so
I don't think it dims now, does it?
no. So fluorescent lamps or LED lighting is designed to be a certain brightness at all times. So, there may be instances where at night the marquee with traditional lighting would look a little bit too bright. The message center is designed to dim throughout the day. So the levels have been set, from years and years of research. We've been putting up electronic message centers for well over 35 years. So those levels have been tested and deemed appropriate. So that 10% of the max brightness is pretty much a standard in our industry.
Any other questions?
No. No. Nothing.
All right. Then let's see if we have any, so thank you for that. Do we have any public comments in opposition to this? Yes. Yes, you may come up to the microphone and identify yourself.
Could I have a seat? My name's Peter Panessa. I've been running Keene Sign Works for about 40 years in town. I've made most of the signs in the downtown area, and I was also a member of the committee that rewrote the sign code for its last major revision, which I'm not sure how long ago that was, 10 or 15 years. It was quite a while ago. We had, it was a 2-year process, believe it or not. And during that time, we had 3 public hearings to get public input about the sign code. And as you can imagine, we sat there for 3 or 4 hours during the published hours, and almost nobody came in. But we did get a handful of people at each of these 3 meetings, and the one consistent thing they were after was they didn't want these electronic signs in town. So that was really the only public feedback we got, and that's why there's a blanket ban on them. I was also involved in renovating the theater sign the last time around, and I in total agreement it needs renovating, and I support the theater and their mission, and I understand their need to get their message out better. But I do also have some opinions about the aesthetics of downtown, the historic district in particular, of which the theater is a big piece of. And so when I only found about this recently. I knew that it had been approved once before and never happened. And I wanted to give some input on a couple of things. One was, you mentioned the scrolling messages and sponsors and whatnot. There's another blanket ban in town, and that's what they call off-premise advertising. So I want to make sure it's not like you're selling ad time on this thing for other businesses, even if they're supporters, because it is now it's like a billboard with scrolling ads for something that's not the shows. And the other thing I wanted to bring up, I think you have a little pass-out single sheet there that talks about some other theaters that have done these EMCs in a manner that made them blend in with the marquee better, so that rather than a full-color display, it was more like black and white, which is similar to what's in the theater now, a lit white background with black letters. I feel like that would be a reasonable compromise. It would give them the advantages of the EMC. They wouldn't have to go out and change the letters. They could control it electronically. They could scroll their messaging, but it would be, appearance-wise, I think, fit better with the downtown and the theater marquee as it is.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for this gentleman? Okay. Is there anyone else in opposition? So we can allow
I do
the,
want to state, I'm not in opposition to it in totally. I'm
Sure.
just saying, consider this
Sure.
as a possible
absolutely,
compromise.
absolutely. How about anybody in support of this? Okay, so the applicant can now respond to the questions that were just brought up. There were 2 or 3 there.
So do you want to, I have some things to say, but I think letting Steve come here and kind of the professional here, but just from the Kelowna's perspective, we're making a serious investment in this technology, and the impact is, yes, one of the reasonings is that we are looking to minimize the liability of any of the sign changing and the liability that these letters, these heavy letters, sit on a wire. But part of it also is to bring the Colonial into a more modern footprint. And there are theaters in historic districts all over the country that do have these signs that allow for enhanced marketing, enhanced communication. And I think that that's also part of the nature of what we're looking to do with this variance.
So I think, I think even Peter would agree, electronic message centers are kind of the current technology. It's widely accepted. It's the easiest and safest way to get messages out to the community. I think the off-premise advertising that Peter mentioned, I think when the theater was kind of stating their intent, it would be to advertise events at the theater as well as community events. Whether it be Old Homes Day, 5K race, welcome back students, what have you. Maybe recognizing a sponsor, thanking them for, a donation or whatever it is. That might toe the line between on-premise and off-premise advertising, third-party advertising. So, again, if it's the municipality's wish that, it advertises only the events at the theater, I'm sure the theater is amenable to that. And just to speak to the historic aspect, I'm not sure which page was included there, but pretty much nationwide, historical theaters are moving to a digital marquee. If you look at Paramount Theater in Boston, Majestic Theater in Boston, the Wilbur Theater, those are just 3 examples that I worked on in the last year. We have dozens of case studies and testimonials from historic theaters that speak to how they went digital and maintain the historic aspect of the theater. We even have a write-up in Historical Theater magazine, which I did not know existed until I saw the write-up. And I mentioned to Peter before the meeting, I'd be happy to share any of that with him or with the board as well. So. Concord, New Hampshire, the theater downtown. Concord does not allow EMCs as well, but their exception is for performing arts centers and theaters as well. So there's a performing arts center and a theater that are both in the downtown historic district of Concord that are utilizing electronic message centers.
Thank you. And as I understand it, it is only the message area that is basically, it's white right now. It's not anything above it. It's not, nothing else is being changed out. It's just the message portion
Yes.
that is being addressed.
That's correct.
Okay, just wanted to make sure of that. All right, do we have any other questions for the applicant? Any other public comments? Okay, so let us close the public hearing. If we need to ask any other questions, I'm sure you'll be available for us. And let's go into some deliberations. Yes, Mr. Clements.
Just to give a definition to the board for off-premise signs. So defined in the LDC, off-premise signs are a sign that directs attention to a development, business establishment, commodity, service, or entertainment that is conducted, sold, or offered at a location other than the premise upon which the sign is located. So advertising for events, things that are taking place at the Colonial wouldn't necessarily be an off-premise sign. Running a thank you sponsor that may be for another business in town who has donated to the Colonial, that's moving into probably what would be considered an off-premise sign. The application's request this evening doesn't cover the allowance of off-premise signage. It's merely about the electronic copy sign.
All right, understood. Thank you. All right, so move into some discussion prior to deliberation. So let's go through the criteria in order and make our life easy. So criteria 1, granting the variance would not be contrary to the public interest. Comments on that?
None from me, Ed Guyot.
I would say that it is, it would not be contrary to the public interest. Do I have anyone?
As I started to state earlier, my concern is more of the precedent it sets for other businesses downtown. I think any of us, if we look at everything in a vacuum, would be supporting the Colonial and all it does. That's why I was pushing more for
Can you turn on your microphone, please?
sorry about that. I was pushing for more of a definitive definition to work within so that we don't have a situation where places that we would not want to see these kind of signs start popping up all along downtown, such as bars or any other activities that somebody else might want to push for. That's all. That's my concern.
Sure.
In and of itself, I don't see any concern with the Colonial. However, it's just what's going to prevent the next business or somebody who we wouldn't want to have that kind of a sign, or the community wouldn't want that kind of sign.
Right.
Do we have the capacity to respond now or no?
If we have closed it and we're discussing, but we can reopen it and you can respond to that.
I thought that's the function of this body here, that we are coming for a one-time variance. So if a bar came to you, this body would be the one to make that assessment and judgment. Am I correct in saying that?
Correct. This variance only applies to this property. It would not carry over, it would not set a precedent for other properties per se. Each one, each variance is a unique in that respect. Is that correct?
That is correct, Mr. Chairman. The decisions made by this body are not precedent-setting. A future property owner can't come in and say, oh, well, you gave it to the Colonial, so you have to give it to me.
Right.
Each situation is unique in its request.
Right. Also, I don't know of any other place that has an existing sign that would fall under what the Colonial's asking. So it would be, I could see definitely it would be different if somebody were trying to put a sign up that did not have one at all.
No,
I just
wanted it to be noted that
Yeah.
we do have some
Yep.
very litigious business owners and people who might push the envelope. And we
Yep.
just gotta be aware of that, that's all.
Yep. Okay, thank you. Let's move on to number 2, if we don't have any other discussion with that. If the variance were granted, the spirit of the ordinance would be observed. My feeling for this is, again, it's an existing sign that they're trying to update it. They're not actually putting a new sign out there. So it's not actually doing something contrary to the ordinance in that respect. Certainly a brand-new sign would be a completely different concern. But again, an existing one, and with the ability of the lights to basically react to whatever the outside light is. Again, it actually makes it more responsive and less literally glaring. But other thoughts?
Yeah, I agree, Mr. Chairman, and I'd like to add too that in my view here, we're dealing with the evolution of lighting technology, moving from fluorescent I don't even know what's behind the white. Is it fluorescent or is it incandescent? But either way, moving to the latest technology of LED, personally I think makes a lot of sense. It's more responsive to the environment that the Colonial lives in, from what I've heard from the applicant. So I'm good with number 2.
And also, the applicant did note that it's almost impossible to fix it now. There are not replacement parts, they're not coming off an assembly line anyplace. So that creates a little bit of an issue for a little bit further down in our questions. All right, number 3, granting the variance would do substantial justice. So in this case, because of the fact that they are unable to really repair or update the existing sign, something would have to come in to replace it. And it wouldn't make sense to put in maybe a new fluorescent sign or something like that, because then we're at best status quo with something that's 50, 60, 70 years old, instead of progressing forward. So I would see that as it would be doing substantial justice, but I definitely encourage comments.
I agree with your observations.
I agree with that one as well.
Okay. Number 4, if the variance were granted, the values of the surrounding properties would not be diminished. I think that one's pretty obvious. Again, the sign's already there. It's not going to have any sort of visual impact that's any different than what is already there. And except for not having people out there on ladders and stuff like that occasionally, I don't think there's any issue in terms of property values.
I agree.
I agree as well.
5, unnecessary hardship. Owing to the special conditions of the property that distinguish it from other properties in the area, denial of the variance would result in unnecessary hardship because no fair and substantial relationship exists between the general public purposes of the ordinance provision and the specific application of that provision to the property. As was stated, this is the only theater that we have in Keene of this age. It's the only sign of this type that I know of for a theater in Keene. So if we were to go by the letter of the law, so to speak, there's no comparison. There's nothing else in town that would have this sort of challenge. So I don't see an issue with that either.
I agree. I would assume that the unnecessary hardship would be they've already done their due diligence. They know the cost between trying to fix it and upgrade it versus the new system. So any denial would lead to an unnecessary hardship that a nonprofit entity in our community wouldn't be able to withstand.
Right.
Agreed.
And then the proposed use is a reasonable one. So again, it's It's basically updating something that's already in existence, as opposed to putting something new in. I do think that just acknowledging the fact that that they know that, as has been discussed here, that this is only having to do with one portion of what our code is, and that they would not be able to, the Colonial wouldn't be able to do advertising for other entities, essentially. That it would be their events, and I'm not sure, in terms of things like sponsors, or something like that, whether it is our purview to say anything about that as a restriction. Mr. Clements, do you have any thoughts on that?
So the original condition, when the variance was first approved, was related to basically some of the things that an electronic copy sign can do that a manual change copy sign can't do. It's a very interesting sort of tightrope you have to walk in regards to sign codes and sign law. So it would be, I would encourage the board to, if you're thinking about additional conditions on allowing the electronic copy sign, it would be best suited to the functionality of the machine itself. You can't, things like color, for example, you can't really regulate.
Right.
If they wanted to display images, for example. But if you said, like, it could only be text, that may be a restriction that could function.
Well, thoughts from other guys, other folks on the board in terms of the restriction that there was is the sign shall not be used to display animated or flashing images or text, which, you know, I would include that this time. There's no difference there. And again, acknowledging that it would be, I'm not sure who would be the officer who would be trying to check on, was that wording one thing or another? I don't know. Trying to police it would be a little bit difficult too.
Yeah, my concern with this is because it's so visible, it's so prominent, it's iconic, really, a part of the downtown. And there are going to be lots of people in the community that are going to have really different opinions and feelings about the sign, who may not be here this evening, even if this is kind of the time to raise those concerns. So I think there needs to be a reasonable conditions that the applicant can work with. But there is also the greater community to be concerned about as well. I know that's not helpful at all, but.
Well, so, yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was going to ask Evan for a clarification of the language of the restriction. So the sign shall not be used to display animated or flashing images. I get that. That goes back to my previous question. Then it says, or text. And is it safe to presume that that means flashing text? Or does it mean letters and words? Because if it does, you've eliminated the use of the sign.
Absolutely, and that's definitely not the intent of this condition. It very much is animated, flashing, attention-grabbing articulation is the concern.
So we may want to clarify that restriction if we place a restriction on it.
Whatever you think makes
In other
the
words,
most sense.
saying flashing
flashing
images or flashing text as opposed to text as a.
Yes.
Yeah.
Just
Sure.
for a point of clarification, because my concern would be, from a precedent standpoint, someone could argue,
It should be a blank screen.
there's text and the restriction says text. I'm just trying to make it clean. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. but we'll get there.
So anything else from you, Zach?
What I was gonna say is, part of the thing that's most intriguing was part of this line in this, it says, can be programmed with the lettering and columns of the original marquee look.
Can you turn on your microphone, please?
Sorry. I'm so sorry about that. Can we have the original marquee look? So basically, I love the idea that you're essentially just creating an LED version of what you already have now. And
Yeah, I think part of the leap into the future is that you're not shackling us to the past either. I think that that's part of the added benefit and impact is that we are able to properly market the events that we have and caging a theater, a historic theater that has so much economic impact on businesses and restaurants downtown. I will tell you that it's getting more and more challenging to get people into a theater. It's getting more and more challenging to run the business of this, and putting more and more, like allowing the permit to go through, but yet keeping the restrictions that kind of shackle the organization. I think that we're probably dealing with, as Peter Panessa said, they had 3 sessions and they sat there and a few people came in. We're trying to think about the best intent for the community. And I also think that assume best intent from our perspective as well. We're not looking to pull a fast one on the city. We're not looking to do an aha gotcha. Now we have flashing signs. Our intent is to elevate our business, elevate downtown, and elevate this region. And so I think that also sort of needs to be understood as in terms of the spirit of what this is, the variance is being requested for.
An option could be to restrict how quickly the copy changes. So setting like no more than one change every 30 minutes, for example. If they had different events that they wanted to cycle through, it would be at a duration that would work for the applicant, but also not run the risk of feeling animated or flashing or something like that.
All right, so if I could address the applicants. So what was just suggested would be to roughly put a time limit on each message before it switches to something else. Because I do have to say, if it were switching like every 8 seconds or something like that, that might bother me a little bit if I was on Main Street. So I guess my question would be, since this has been done like in Concord, other places, do you know, yes, if you want to approach the microphone, please. And just state your name.
Hi, my name's Casey Southwell, and I work for Sousa Signs. Normally, there's standard hold times. Like Concord, I live right outside Concord. I walk that street all the time. Concord's NHDOT hold time recommendation is 10 seconds. Concord, I'm gonna just address everything because I've been sitting off to the side. Concord has put that message center in a long time ago, and they didn't have a bunch of people free-for-alling it. It's a theater. They have people come in. They also come in with, there's a package that they will get to advertise on there. Like if it's Melissa Etheridge, she comes with, because I did marketing as well, she comes with artwork for that message center. Standard hold time, minute, maybe less. That way it's not crazy. Ed and I can show them exactly where it is. They're gonna do classes with Watchfire. This is a pretty big investment for them. There are classes for them to go through and learn all the tools to use. I'm pretty sure there's some way we can come to some sort of agreement with hold times.
So just to talk a little bit about hold times, Casey mentioned New Hampshire DOT regulations. So any digital message center that faces a state highway has to hold for a minimum of 10 seconds. Again, when you consider the speed of traffic driving, the pedestrian traffic out there, having a hold time of, say it was 10 seconds, if there's multiple events, multiple messages going on at the theater, it allows a pedestrian to see, one or two messages, or someone driving to see one or two messages as driving through town. If it's deemed that a 10-second hold time is distracting, again, we can program the sign for a longer hold time. So if you were looking for language, to allow the variance, I would suggest at least, conforming to like a New Hampshire DOT standard of a minimum of 10 seconds.
Thank you. Any questions to redirect?
No. No, thank you.
All right, thank you. So back to, what do you gentlemen feel about 10-second hold times?
I guess I do have a question then.
Sure.
In that study, is that based on speed? You're talking about, 25 miles per hour going down Main Street versus a more busier street with 35, 50 miles per hour. You have the chance to be distracted more if you're going slower and you see multiple changes going.
The studies that are out there, when it comes to distracted driving, and if a message center is more distracting than, say, just a manual reader board, there's been studies done by Texas A&M, and another institution that I can't think of off the top of my head. There's no discernible difference between a changeable electronic message center versus static signage. So if someone looks at a sign, someone looks at a sign. The fact that it changes a message, again, seamlessly, not flashing at a driver or scrolling a long line of text that someone needs to stare at to read the entire line. Again, that's already written in there that there's no blinking, flashing, scrolling, so you're going to abide by that. Again, having a 10-second hold time, for a driver who is several hundred yards away that sees a sign, it takes about 6 seconds to read a simple message and process it. So, again, if it was a 10-second hold time and there's, 2 or 3 events, a pedestrian or a commuter may see 2 messages. That's, there's no studies that show that, at 25 miles an hour versus 35 versus 45, that there's any more distractions to a message that changes every 10 seconds versus every 10 minutes.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so we'll, again, close the meeting, and if we don't have any other deliberations, would someone like to entertain a motion with the modified language?
Mr. Chairman, have we decided on the modified language?
Well, the only part that I know that we had said was flashing images or flashing text. I think the hold time, since it's dictated, the 10-second is dictated by NHDOT as a minimum. I would use that as a guideline that we don't have to, I don't think we have to put that in writing. But if somebody says that they would like to have a minimum of a 10-second hold time, that's okay with me also. Thoughts on that?
No. Not for me.
I liked the applicant's professional's description using blinking, flashing, scrolling as a way to help clarify what was my concern. So I might suggest then that the restrictions say something to the effect of, the sign shall not be used to display animated or blinking, flashing, or scrolling text. We could add the time limit, but I'm not hung up on the time limit. I think that's kind of a given. I don't know how anyone else feels, whether that helps clarify it or if it just further muddies the water.
I'm just writing it down. So the sign shall not be used to display animated, blinking, scrolling, or flashing images or text.
Sounds good.
Okay. So would someone like to make that motion, please?
I will make the motion with the restriction we just discussed to approve the applicant 95 Main Street, Keene, tax map number 575-008-000, relative to the theater marquee sign replacement as detailed in the application.
I
And
second that motion.
seconded. All right. So that was by Mr. Gaia, seconded by Mr. Leroy. All right. Let us go through the criteria.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I hate to be a stickler.
Sure.
But you do need to read that condition in there with the motion.
Okay, here we go. The sign shall not be used to display animated, what's that one say?
Oh, blinking.
Okay. Start again. The sign shall not be used to display animated, blinking, flashing, scrolling images or text.
All right. Do we have a second on that one, since it's now full? All right. All right. So let us go through the criteria. Number one, granting the variance would not be contrary to the public interest. All those in favor? That's unanimous. Number two, if the variance were granted, the spirit of the ordinance would be observed. All those in favor? That's unanimous. Number three, granting the variance would do substantial justice. All those in favor? Unanimous. Number four, if the variance were granted, the values of surrounding properties would not be diminished. All those in favor? Number five, unnecessary hardship. Owing to special conditions of the property that distinguish it from other properties in the area, denial of the variance would result in unnecessary hardship because no fair and substantial relationship exists between the general public purposes of the ordinance provision and the specific application of that provision to the property. All those in favor? And number two, the proposed use is a reasonable one. Again, all those in favor? And that was unanimous. So on the main motion, approve ZBA 2025-07 for the variance to allow an electronically activated changeable copy sign for property located at 95 Main Street, tax map number 575-008-00000, as shown in the application and supporting materials received on July 2nd, 2025, with the following conditions. The sign shall not be used to display animated or blinking or scrolling or flashing images or text. All those in favor? It passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Congratulations. Thank you. Yes, I invite our rest of the board to join us. All right, our next application is a continued ZBA 2025-08, petitioner Michael Pappas of 147 to 151 Main Street LLC, represented by Timothy Sampson of Sampson Architects, requests an extension for property located at 147 Main Street, tax map number 584060000-000, and is in the downtown core district. The petitioner is requesting an extension for a special exception granted on August 7th, 2023, per Article 26.6.9 of the zoning regulations. Staff?
Before we begin, Mr. Chairman, is anybody in the audience here to represent this application tonight? It appears that the applicant is not present, Mr. Chairman. Would you like to continue this application to the regularly scheduled October meeting?
I'm seeing nods, so yes, let
Okay.
us continue that to the next.
So that will be
The
October 6th, 2025 at 6:30 PM, located here in council chambers at 3 Washington Street.
Thank you. All right, we will move on then.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, we do need an action of the board to continue
okay.
the application.
All right, so do I have a motion to continue that for next month at the date that was signified by Mr. Clements?
Yeah, I'll make the motion to move that application to the October meeting.
All right, and a second?
I'll second that.
All right, that was Mr. Burke and seconded by Mr. Leroy. All those in favor?
Aye.
And that's unanimous. Thank you very much. All right, next application. ZBA 2025-12, petitioners Key Road Development LLC and Agnost Companies of 1662 Elm Street, Manchester, New Hampshire, represented by Chad Brannon of Fieldstone Land Consultants of 206 Elm Street, Milford, New Hampshire, request a variance for property located at 109 to 147 Key Road, tax map 110-022-000, and is in the Commerce District. The petitioners are requesting a charitable gaming facility within 200 feet that is required per Article 8.3.2.1.2. III of the zoning regulations. From city staff, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The subject parcel is an existing 5.8 acre lot located on the north side of Key Road, approximately 1,300 feet from Washington Street, with the Hampton Inn located directly to the south and the Key Road Shopping Plaza to the east. The parcel contains an existing shopping plaza with several multi-tenant commercial buildings, parking areas, and associated site improvements. The plaza contains businesses such as Keen Cinemas, Sherwin-Williams Paints, and Toy City. The New Hampshire Department of Health and Human Services Keene District Office is also located in the plaza. Purpose of this application is to seek a variance from the 250-foot distance requirement from a residential use to accommodate the relocation of the Revo Casino and Social House from its current location at 172 Emerald Street to this Toy City tenant space in the shopping plaza located within the subject parcel. The northeast corner of the building where the tenant space from the charitable gaming facility is located within 170 feet from one of the adjacent apartment buildings located to the north of the subject property. It is worth noting that while the charitable gaming facility use standards are extensive, there is a sort of discrepancy between the required separation from a residential use and a charitable gaming facility and how that distance is supposed to be measured. The subsection of the regulations that requires this 250 feet, the specific requirement says from a dwelling to the charitable gaming facility facade, but the the category of regulations that specific requirement is in outlines how this measurement should be calculated. And in that, it actually says it's from the property line of the residential dwelling to the facade of the charitable gaming facility. So the applicant is accurate in, they said it's about 170 feet from the corner of the multifamily building to the rear wall of the shopping plaza. However, that measurement should be the property line, from the property line of where that multifamily building sits on to the facade of the shopping center. So that distance is less than 170 feet. The applicant's request remains unchanged, and so staff believes that it is appropriate to move forward with this request, and the applicant can speak for the merits of the application.
Thank you.
Yep, that's all I have.
Does anyone on the board have any other questions for Evan at the moment? All right, let's ask the applicant to come up. And again, just to remind you to speak into the microphones, identify yourself by name and your address. If it says, if it's green, it's on.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board. My name is Dick Anagnost. I'm a principal in the Anagnost companies as well as Key Road Development. And also I'm a principal in the New Hampshire group, which operates the Revo Casino and Social House Group, one of which locations is here in Keene. If I could indulge the board for a couple minutes, I'd like to just give you an overview of exactly what we do, so that there's a full understanding of what we're requesting tonight. So what we're requesting tonight is to move a charitable gaming facility from Emerald Street, where it has been for a number of years. We have been in the business for 27 years. We have been serving the Keene area for in excess of 20 years. We originally started in Hinsdale at the racetrack, if any of you recall the racetrack back that far. From there, we moved into one of the hotels, and as we expanded, we moved to the Colony Mill and ultimately to the Emerald Street Casino when we consolidated with Wonder Casino. We are exactly what I'm describing, a charitable fundraiser. Okay, I know that we're referred to as a casino, it's in our name, but we're not in the same category as a traditional casino that you might think of in Las Vegas or Atlantic City. We hold no gambling license. What we do is we provide a facility and expertise to raise money for charities who acquire their licenses from the state of New Hampshire directly. In the last 10 months, we've served multiple charities in the Keene area. We are obligated to run 2 charities for every 10-day period. Each charity, qualifying charity in our state, which has to be registered with the charitable trust or the Attorney General's office and be a 501c3 status, gets 10 gaming nights per year. And we have to run 2 charities for each 10-day period. We served, just in the last 10 months, the Keene Housing Kids Collaborative, to give you a flavor, the Junior Swamp Bats, the Knights of Columbus, American Legion, Southwestern Community Services, V&A, Keene Rotary, Keene Lions, Keene Senior Citizens, Keene Montessori, Keene Kiwanis, and the list is pretty exhaustive considering there's 2 that run every 10 days. Our company also operates in 5 other locations, or 5 other locations: Lebanon, Conway, Manchester, Dover, and Berlin. Manchester started 27 years ago. Lebanon, we just moved into a brand new facility after 7 years in the older facility. Conway is brand new. We've been there for probably around since January. Dover has been there for approximately 11 or 12 years. We just renovated that facility as well, and Berlin, we were in the basement of an old church for a long time, and we've just acquired a facility there to be built out. We are by election, the state law says that we can serve customers 18 years and older. By election of our own volition, we serve only 21 and older, and we have our own on-site security force that patrols both interior and exterior with door ID checkers so that no one under the age of 21 enters our facility. We're governed by the Lottery Commission. There are very strict rules that we have to follow regarding surveillance, security procedures, all of those types of things. And in this facility, we'll be able to upgrade from what we currently have at Emerald Street to full state-of-the-art. And Lottery is in full support of our application. Unlike traditional casinos where you can go in as long as you're gambling, you get free drinks. That is regulated in the state of New Hampshire. We can provide no free alcohol. The state liquor laws prohibit that from occurring. All of the employees and owners undergo a rigorous background check conducted by the Attorney General's office and the State Lottery Commission, and they're all licensed and badged in order to work and operate there. Along with myself tonight is my partner, Brian Michaels, sitting back over my left shoulder, and to my right is Chad Brannon from Fieldstone Land Consultants, who's our engineer, who will now take you into the technical presentation of what we're asking.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. For the record, my name is Chad Brannon. I'm a civil engineer and principal owner with Fieldstone Land Consultants. We have an office here at 45 Roxbury Street in Keene. We, as Mr. Clements addressed, we are before you tonight seeking a variance from section 8.32 of the Land Development Code to permit a charitable gaming facility on tax map parcel 110-22, which has a physical address of 133 Key Road. This proposal would relocate Revo Casino and Social House from their current downtown location at Emerald Street to the Key Road location, and more specifically in the current location of Toy City. The subject parcel and all abutting properties to this site are located in the Commerce District, where charitable gaming is an approved and permittable use. The subject parcel is also located on Key Road, which is one of few roads in the city that has been approved for a charitable gaming facility use. The subject property, as Mr. Clements touched on, is a 5.8 acre property and currently is fully developed into a plaza with multiple tenants occupying space. The building on site consists of 61,526 square feet, and the property is currently occupied by a number of tenants. And I won't restate them because that was covered in staff's presentation. But what is important to point out is the location of the site and its surroundings and how the building is orientated, because that's going to be a large part of the discussion this evening as we walk through the application. We are surrounded by primarily commercial uses with a hotel, formerly the Holiday Inn Express to the west. I believe it's now the Elm City Hotel. We have Brown Computer Solutions in the Hampton Inn and Suites, located to the south, as well as the Mazda auto dealership. We have the Key Road Plaza, which is a commercial shopping plaza situated to the east, and then multifamily residential buildings, which are situated to the north, which is to the back of the building. So the building itself is actually a buffer to those areas. And again, we'll touch on those. As Mr. Clements pointed out, the charitable gaming regulations in the city have changed and are actually quite restrictive currently. I think they changed in 2023, if I'm not mistaken. And in the code, there's a lot of talk about use standards, and, this particular site meets all of the use standards with one exception. And so I just want to touch on some of the use standards that we, had to meet with this application, because it is very restrictive. And this actually is a road in the city that the staff felt was an appropriate location for the use as long as you meet all of this criteria. And so I think to paint the appropriate picture for this application, we should touch on that briefly before we go into the criteria, the variance criteria. One of the use standards is you can only have one charitable gaming facility on a lot. Certainly, we would meet that standard. Another standard is the lot area has to be 1.25 acres in size at a minimum. And so us being 5.8 acres in size, we certainly satisfy that minimum standard. The property has to be located in the Commerce District, which we are, and has to be located on a very select few roads. And Key Road happens to be one of them, so we meet that standard. The proposed gaming facility has to have a gaming floor area of no less than 10,000 square feet. This facility is anticipated to be approximately 15,000 square feet in size, so we would meet that requirement as well. The parking and traffic for the use actually exists, in this particular location. We have ample parking on site. This project, if we are successful this evening, would have to go through a site plan review before the planning board. And we have already done all the parking calculations with the number, the use breakdown, and I can share with the board that we do satisfy all parking requirements on site, or will satisfy all parking requirements on this site, which I think is a big, important topic when it comes to this type of a use in where it's located within the city. Certainly from a traffic standpoint, Key Road location would be much better than, Emerald Street, where you are really in a downtown district versus Key Road being right on next to the highway. And so I'm sure that's why the city has selected Key Road as an appropriate location for such a use. The charitable gaming facility cannot be located within 500 feet of another facility, which in this location we would not be. The facility cannot be located within 250 feet of a place of worship, a child daycare center, or a public or private school, and we would meet those requirements in this location. And the facility can also not be located within 250 feet of a residential zoning district, which we're not. But we are located within 250 feet of a single-family, two-family, or multifamily dwelling, which is the section that we are seeking relief from. As staff pointed out, there is some contradicting language in the ordinance, but we don't think that's really of much concern as it pertains to this application, primarily because of the orientation of the building and the fact that there's physical barriers between the residential and the gaming facility location. Not only is the building a buffer, meaning the main entrance of the site would be on the Key Road side, there's going to be no entrances at all on the back side of the building to the charitable gaming facility. There'd only be emergency exits located there. So there would be no activity behind the building. So the building itself really creates this significant and substantial buffer from the active use on the property. But on top of that, there is no vehicular or pedestrian connectivity to the adjacent residential uses because of natural features of the land. There's a drainage swale that cuts through the property, and there's fencing that runs the entire length of the back portion of this site. So we think those are significant conditions that in many ways address the concerns and likely the goals and objectives that, the city was looking for when they adopted, this standard. And we'll certainly touch on that as we get into the criteria. Currently, the Key Road Plaza building, the 133 Key Road, where the charitable gaming facility would be located, is approximately 170 feet from the existing multifamily residential building that's situated behind it on lot 109-006. And it's approximately 68 feet from the boundary line. So that's what we're seeking relief from this evening. I think, based on staff's recommendation, it would be the 68-foot dimension, because that would be the most strict interpretation of the ordinance. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have at this time, or I'd be happy to walk through the criteria.
Any questions from?
If I may add some more color, Mr. Chair?
Certainly.
That dimension of 170.9 feet is to one of the buildings. It's a multi-building facility. We are in excess of 250 feet from all of the rest of the surrounding buildings in the development. The actual distance to the gaming floor, because the rear of the building is where the kitchen and all of the loading facilities and stuff is actually in excess of 250 feet. And the distance to the front door where you get in and check your ID is 317 feet, and you'd have to drive all the way around in order to get there. So I just wanted to make you aware that there's significant distance between us and that single residential building.
Thank you.
Chairman, I've got a question, just a clarifying question for you. We talked about no traffic, vehicular, or pedestrian at the back of the building, but you talked also about loading for the kitchen and things like that. So are deliveries occurring back there? What sort of activity is going to occur in that, behind the building?
There is a loading dock in the rear in which we would receive the restaurant supplies, but the exits to there are only fire exits, exit only. We intentionally have controlled access because of the age restriction that we enforce, so there is no entrance in the rear of the property, only through the main entrance. Everybody enters through there because the employees are logged in through there. Their badges are scanned, because we all have to be badged by the state of New Hampshire. So we know who's on site at all times. The surveillance controls force their controlled entrance to only one, although there are cameras and alarms on all of the fire exits, but they're push bar, they're not accessible from the outside of the building.
And just to build upon that as well, there's an existing loading dock in the back of the building, so we would just be repurposing that. And so in our opinion, it wouldn't be really any increase in intensity of the use. That use currently exists, being a commercial building. What I meant by no vehicular or pedestrian access was meaning there's no ability for vehicles or pedestrians to cross between the commercial project and the residential project. And my opinion, when I look at the ordinance and think about what was somebody intending with the goals and objectives of this ordinance, is you want to be a certain distance from, this type of a facility typically, whether it's pedestrian or vehicular, traffic impact potentials. And because of the way this building's orientated, and because of the way the street systems are, and because of the fencing, this site has no ability to have impacts on pedestrian or vehicular traffic on that residential property. And so that's what I was referring, so I really appreciate that question.
Any other questions for the applicants? All right, so you could go through the criteria for us?
Sure. Criteria 1, granting the variance would not be contrary to the public interest because, and as we address this criteria, Mr. Chairman, we state the Supreme Court has held that a variance is contrary to the public interest when it threatens the public health, safety, or welfare, or materially alters a neighborhood. And we believe granting this variance will not threaten these, nor will it otherwise injure the public rights. We believe that allowing a charitable gaming facility at this location and in this far, from the adjacent lot containing a residential building will not result in negative impacts to the public for the reasons that we previously stated. The public interest is upheld with this application because the portion of the building that will be used for the gaming is more than 250 feet from the existing multifamily building or residence. It is only the rear portion of the existing building that is within 250 feet of the residential dwelling. The interior of the rear portion of the building, as was stated by Mr. Agnos, is going to be a restaurant use where the kitchen and offices will be, and other non-gambling uses. It is also important to point out that there is no practical connection by vehicle or pedestrians from the multifamily housing development to the subject site and vice versa. So there cannot be a negative impact as it relates to that. There is no access connection, and there is significant buffering between that use. There's existing vegetation, there's fencing, and then there's actually a pretty large drainage swale that really would be quite difficult to navigate, and provides kind of a natural buffer as well. Moving on to criteria 2, unless you have any questions. Criteria 2, if the variance were granted, the spirit of the ordinance would be observed because the spirit of the ordinance is really tied to criteria 1, as it is in the public's interest to uphold the spirit of the ordinance. The ordinance allows for charitable gaming facilities in the commerce zone, and more specifically identifies Key Road as one of the few acceptable places in the city for it to be located. Relocating Revo Casino and Social House from downtown Keene to this approved location on Key Road will be in the spirit of the ordinance. Granting this variance will allow Revo Casino to be relocated to a district in which charitable gaming is an allowed use, and increase the distance between the gaming facility and residential dwellings. In its current location, it certainly has a lot of residential dwellings within, the 250-foot distance. The purpose of the separation from residential uses, in our opinion, is to provide an adequate buffer and buffering between the uses. The existing residential site on lot 109-006 will not experience, in our opinion, any appreciable change from the current status quo. All of the parking and public access for the proposed facility is located in the front of the building, buffered from the residential buildings, not only by the building itself, but also by the fencing and natural vegetation and that drainage swale. Since this proposal will relocate an existing non-conforming use to a section of the city where the use is considered permitted without negative impacts to the city or abutting properties, we believe it will follow the spirit and intent of the ordinance. Moving on to number 3, granting the variance would do substantial justice because granting this variance would allow for the relocation of an existing casino to a more appropriate section of the city. Substantial justice would be done because both the city and the applicant would benefit from the relocation with no negative effects, in our opinion, to the surrounding community. A denial of this variance would result in no apparent gain to the general public. The residents that reside on the adjacent residential lots are the most, potentially the most affected parties to the 250-foot encroachment, and they would still be adequately buffered from the proposed use. The change of having a charitable gaming facility in the Key Road Plaza, in our opinion, would be imperceivable to the adjacent residential abutters. Again, because of the location and the fact that the active portion of the site would be on the other side of the building. We believe, therefore, the 170-foot separation of buildings and the 68 feet of separation to the property lines, along with the natural buffers, would be more than adequate for the separation of uses. We believe the current proposal is therefore reasonable and benefits the applicant and the city because we would be bringing this site, the use, into a location that is certainly permitted with the one exception, and would be making the existing non-conforming condition more conforming by the move. Number 4, if the variance were granted, the values of surrounding properties would not be diminished because the proposed charitable gaming facility will not detract from the existing residential use of the abutting property, and the requested separation relief between buildings will not expose the abutting properties to any noxious or deleterious use. The proposed change from a toy store to a gaming facility will stimulate the businesses in the surrounding area. As a result, we would expect this project to have positive impacts on the surrounding businesses, and because of the orientation of the site, with the active uses being on the Key Road side, with the building providing a buffer as well as the fencing, the existing vegetation and the drainage, we believe the fact that would be no real activity or no increase in activity, behind the building, that there would be no negative impacts on the adjacent residential uses and associated property values. And then moving on to number 5, Mr. Chairman, unnecessary hardship. Part A, owing to special conditions of the property that distinguish it from other properties in the area, denial of the variance would result in unnecessary hardship because I, no fair, insubstantial relationship exists between the general public purpose of the ordinance provision and the specific application of that provision to the property because the general public purpose of this section is to shield and provide separation to residential buildings from potential impacts resulting from activities associated with a charitable gaming facility. There are several special conditions that distinguish this property from others and prohibit strict conformance to the ordinance. The most obvious special condition is that both the Key Road Plaza, the 133 Key Road location, and the abutting multifamily residential buildings exist. They're existing buildings. This application does not propose to build a new facility for charitable gaming, but rather occupy an existing plaza. The two properties are buffered by buildings, a drainage swale, natural vegetation, chain link fence, and there is no ability for pedestrian or vehicular connection. So they are substantially buffered and with none of those being a potential impact. The existing plaza is the only actual impact to the required 250-foot buffer from the property corner. The main entrance to the site and the active portions of the site will all be over 250 feet from that property corner. And because of that, we believe there's no fair and substantial relationship exists between this ordinance provision and how it applies to this property. There will be no realized change to the abutting residential dwellings. There's no change in use to the back of the building, or intensity, I should say, to the back of the building, in our opinion. The loading dock that exists today will be used as a loading dock tomorrow. There will be no main entrances at all into the facility from the rear of the building, only emergency exits out. Granting the variance will, as we've previously stated, improve the location of the existing Revo Casino. Key Road is a permitted site for charitable gaming facilities and will be able to accommodate the associated parking and traffic requirements generated by this change of use. And we will be addressing those hopefully before the planning board with a site plan review process. Moving the existing business from Emerald Street to the Key Road Plaza will improve an existing non-conforming use in the city and will be, in our opinion, a benefit to both the city and the applicant. An adequate separation of 170 feet will be maintained between the existing buildings and approximately 68 feet from the rear corner of the plaza to the property line. And we believe this does, under the circumstances, provide suitable buffering between the proposed gaming facility building and abutting residential properties and buildings. Allowing relief from the buffer requirement does not unduly frustrate the zoning ordinance. We believe the general public purpose of the ordinance provision is to separate residential zones from the charitable gaming use allowed in certain sections of the commerce zone. However, that is not applicable in this specific case, as all gaming-related uses will be located more than 250 feet away, again, because of the internal floor plan inside the building. As I stated before, there is no pedestrian or vehicular connection to the adjacent properties, so there cannot be any impacts from those. And for these reasons, we do not believe that a fair and substantial relationship exists between the general public purpose of the ordinance provision and the specific application of that provision to the property. Moving on to part two, the proposed use is a reasonable one because we believe that the proposed buffer relief is reasonable because adequate separation will still exist between abutting uses. The proposed charitable gaming facility is a reasonable and permitted use in the commerce zone on Key Road. The charitable gaming facility is actually situated to the front of the building, while the restaurant use is situated to the rear and back of the building. And the fact that there is no, main entrance or really no activity to the rear of the building, and there's no pedestrian or vehicular connection between, the back of the site and the adjacent residential properties is a factor that we hope will be considered here. Due to these unique features, we believe a variance from this section of the zoning ordinance is both reasonable and warranted. And then part B, explain how if the criteria in subparagraph A are not established, an unnecessary hardship will be deemed to exist if and only if, owing to the special conditions of the property that distinguish it from other properties in the area, the property cannot be reasonably used in strict conformance with the ordinance, and a variance is therefore necessary to establish a reasonable use of it. And I'm sorry to be redundant, but many of these topics are the same. There are several factors that make this property in the commerce zone unique and well-suited for the proposed charitable gaming facility. It abuts most other commercial buildings and uses, and the way that this property will be used is, adequate. With the main entrance being on the Key Road side, again, the building, being a buffer, it will occupy an existing plaza on one of the few streets in the city that have already been deemed an area where they are looking to permit this type of use. And that, we believe, is a very important, topic in the fact that we meet all of the other standard use criteria. It will relocate a use from Emerald Street to Key Road, which will make the existing use in the city more conforming. And it will provide a better venue for, frankly, the city and the users and the applicant. The Key Road Plaza is already developed with substantial parking, appropriate traffic, interface with the existing highway system. And this is where, this type of use will be best accessed and where it will have the least amount of impacts on, surrounding properties, all surrounding properties. And that's why we feel this is, an appropriate location, why we think it would be a severe hardship if we were unsuccessful in securing this variance. The plaza building on lot 11022, again, is located 170 feet from a residential building on the abutting lot and approximately 68 feet from the property boundary. And because of that, we are requesting a variance to allow for this reasonable use of the property.
Thank you. Does anyone on the board have a question or comment for the applicant? Mr. Guyot.
Thank you. You've described the current use or the proposed use under your ownership of the rear of the building, the loading dock, some exits fire exits and so on. Is there any potential that the intended use at the beginning would need to change over time?
I highly doubt that because the way that the plaza is situated would not be conducive to putting a door in the rear. There is no parking. The major availability of parking fields is in the front or the key road side of the building. Okay, most of your mechanicals are located to the rear where we're talking about. So the rear of the building contains mechanicals, it contains the kitchen, it contains the storage, it contains the loading dock. Okay, all of that stuff is non-public facing, so it's literally cut off from the main public facing area. It would take a yeoman's job in order to reverse it, and it wouldn't be conducive to being a viable solution to anything because all of your parking is located then in the rear of your building instead of in the front of your front door.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right. Thank you very much. Do we have anyone here with public comments opposed to this proposal? Yes. Please come up to a microphone and identify yourself.
Is this one on?
I think so.
Toby Towsley, 500 Washington Street in Keene. I think we've got few concerns here, and this is really revolving around that 250 feet. And I'd like to draw your attention to page 48, which is the use standards. We've been over this a little bit, but I'd like to point out why it's important. So it is a little confusing because it says on part on C, so use standards 48, page 48, on C, it says that all charitable gaming shall be, this is a must, has to be, when it says shall, this has to be using the distance measured in a straight line without regard to intervening structures from the property line of any site to the closest exterior wall of a charitable gaming facility. And what they're trying to do here is tell you that that exterior wall doesn't really count because that's where the kitchen's going to be. Well, the kitchen's an accessory use. It's still considered the charitable business, okay? So that exterior wall in the back is still the charitable business. But the important thing is that the reality is if you look at the map, Ashbrook Apartments, the lot line to the rear of the building is 50 feet. And the reason this is important, and this is played out in this very board, is that Ashbrook Apartments may expand someday. They may put more apartments. There's a sizable piece of property there, and they could expand and be much closer to this facility. And this is the very reason that our people, our lawmakers, the city councils and whoever designed this, drafted this thing, had in mind was that very reason of why they wanted it from the property line. And so the danger gets to be if we allow this variance to go, and then Ashbrook goes, puts apartments in. Now those apartments where kids play in the backyard would be 50 feet away from a casino. That's not the intent of this ordinance. That's why it matters. You know, the thing to consider here is, you know, Toy City is a low-impact, daytime use, low traffic, low noise. The casino is going to be high impact, be nighttime use, more traffic, more noise. You know, that restaurant out back will have restaurant fans. You know, they'll be using much more air conditioning. That thing will be loaded with air conditioning. This is what any casino uses a ton more AC because they've got a whole bunch of bodies in there. And the machines use enormous amounts of electricity. And so they require AC to cool everything, tremendous amounts, more so than even a restaurant. So I'd like to draw your attention to page 56. This is the first number one for the reason why you should do this. And it's back to that property line, you know. And I think that it really, you have to consider that these future improvements that I talked about, and that's the whole reason why I don't think that flies for that purpose. Number two, I'm really amused by the way that they're using the argument that it's going to make 172 Emerald Street site better by bringing it over here. Well, you can't consider 172 Emerald Street. That should be completely disregarded. Just because you're making a non-conforming use better, you have to be you're charged with looking at this site solely for this site, not for what's happening at 172 Emerald Street. So you've got to completely disregard how non-conforming it is over there. This site is your only charge to be looking at, is what is non-conforming on this site, or what is the hardship, or whatever their reason they needed. So you need to disregard any expression of that 172 Elmer Street is a non-conforming site. That has no bearing to this site here. Question number 3, the applicant hasn't really shown any evidence that a substantial justice would be doing. Just denying a regulation, that's their justice, is by saying, well, if you deny it, then it's not doing an injustice. That's not the correct way to do that. I think if you're looking at number 4 and 5, I think looking at hardships, I don't see any hardship here at all. So let's look at what a hardship is. Now, you guys, a couple years ago, did a hardship for for Roosevelt School. Well, what else are you going to do in Roosevelt School? There's nothing there. You couldn't do anything with it, so you had to do a variance there because there was nothing else you could do. It was an empty building for decades, and so that's why you grant a hardship. Well, there's no hardship here. This place has been a viable location, commercial location, for decades and decades. They don't have vacancies down there. That's all full. They can rent it. They can do all kinds of things down there. They don't need to do a variance there. But would also say that based on what our lawmakers want out of this ordinance, is they could if they wanted to put a casino there, there's all that front. They could they could build a building out closer and be 250 feet away like they're supposed to be. There's no hardship here because they can do other things. This isn't the only thing that can go there. There's no hardship. I mean, asking for a hardship here is just, I just don't see the hardship. What's the hardship? Like I said, it's rentable. The space is viable for other purposes. They could conceivably relocate the building so it became farther away from the distances. I think they'll get a bunch of holes through it on this. I just don't see it. And I guess the one last thing I would say is if you were living at Ashbrook or Brookbend, would you rather have a casino there or a toy store? Thanks.
Thank you. Let me check and see if there are any other public comments, and then you can address all of them at once. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. George Hansel, 84 Elm Street. And I think I would like to point out to the board to pay special attention to Part B, the proposed variance is not contrary to the spirit of the zoning regulations. Part C, the granting of the variance would do substantial justice, and obviously the unnecessary hardship components of the application. And so this is not like a new conversation. This is actually a pretty recent conversation that we've had in the city of Keene about charitable gaming. It was enacted, our most recent version of the standard was enacted in 2025. And so this is really fresh in our thinking. This isn't a case where an applicant is coming and saying these regulations were put in place in the 70s, and what we're looking at today is a substantially different Keene than it was back then. Things have not built up around this, or things have not changed. Basically, this ordinance was put in place with the crafters looking and thinking about exactly what's there today, since it was at the end of 2024 into 2025. I think that's important when you're analyzing and assessing whether this variance request, granting this variance request, would be in the spirit of the regulations. It's very clear to me, reading the regulations, that we were trying to keep these charitable gaming facilities away from residences. And so by granting this variance, you'd be doing the very opposite of that. I think it is also key to point out that language around the distance from the building to the property line of the residential property is important. That's only 68 feet. And so by granting this variance, those living in that property, their backyard, more or less, is going to turn from a toy store into something very different, with different hours of operation, a different level of activity, and a very different sort of scenario for them. I also think this application is going to have a really hard time proving a hardship. I don't see anything really unique about this property that would make it difficult to market to toy stores, retail. It's been occupied, fully occupied, I understand, for many decades and for a long time. And I don't see any characteristics of the parcel that would make it difficult for the applicant to do something different, as the previous speaker said. And so I would hope that the board would have some discussion around the hardship and the spirit of the ordinance very specifically tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other comments? All right, so the applicant, you may address the concerns that were expressed.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, the one thing that I would state is we certainly believe that we have addressed all, the criteria. This process with this project, we've, met, with staff and reviewed the regulations with staff, and we actually initially got an interpretation that, we met the criteria here, and then there was a change in the interpretation that, because of some conflicts and because of basically the more strict interpretation of the paragraph, we should come before the board. But what the undertone most certainly is that this is the area that the city is looking for this use to be. I also don't believe that we have anybody speaking in opposition from the residential properties, for this application this evening. It is my understanding that Mr. Towsley is actually the landlord for my client at Emerald Street. And so there is a clear advantage, to him if this application, were to be denied. But I don't think that there's, any merits, going through the criteria for a denial. When regulations are written generally, they're written for the whole city. That's the whole reason why this board exists. It doesn't matter if the regulation was written last year, 5 years ago, or 25 years ago. There are always circumstances and special circumstances that maybe somebody didn't consider, when regulations were, drafted and adopted. And I certainly think that, the special conditions of this property being an existing plaza, being that it, the backyard of the plaza is what faces the residential property. It's a 60, for round numbers, a 62,000 square foot building that is acting as a buffer to the residential properties to the back. Our client's making a commitment that there will be no increase in activities to the rear of the building, and this board certainly could take that under a condition if it felt, so necessary. But we do think that there are special conditions that exist here that create hardship for this property as it relates to some of these dimensional standards. If we were 250 feet from property to property, but one of the main roads went right through, the residential development, I would venture to guess that that would have more of an impact than the situation that we have here. Would be technically conforming, but would have more of an impact. I would consider that a special condition that this property doesn't have, and therefore should be considered by this board in supporting a variance. There are unique circumstances here. And so I just want to touch on that, and I don't know if my client wants to add anything too.
So I've been doing this a very long time, and I believe it's in the public's good to eliminate larger non-conforming uses for smaller ones. Secondly, I find it unique that the landlords of my current facility are the ones objecting to the distance when we are within, on multiple sides, within distance of residential units. So I guess it's all right if we're in the existing non-conforming use where we're closer to residences. It's all right for those residents. But it wouldn't be all right for the 15 units out of 75 that we are within the setback of. in order to increase all of the activity that they've said, when all of the activity will be on the other side of the building in Key Road. But putting that aside, I think that the residences will, as well as the other commercial areas, will benefit. We have a private security force that patrols outside all night, okay, providing additional security to the neighborhood. We have been in touch with both the hotel owners who are supportive of our application. We had multiple conversations with the housing authority, who happens to own the property behind us, and we invited them to come here tonight if they had an objection, and I was informed by the director that they didn't want to come. They were going to remain neutral on it and not come out in favor or against, so that's why they're not present tonight. They're actually one of our charities that runs with us currently. But putting all of those things aside, I believe that the public good is served here, because we're going to exactly where you guys designed this to be, with one small exception, and those units are in a commercial zone. We're not anywhere near a residential zone. But over and above that, we've heard about additional development and all these other things. Well, to further develop that site, you got to consider wetland setbacks and everything else. If there was additional density that could go there, I'm surprised that they didn't put it in at the time. But I'm going far afield, and I apologize for doing that. And on that, we would like to rest and take any of the board's questions.
Thank you. Mr. Towsley would like to speak again.
It's important to clarify that I am not the landlord. I have no interest in the building on Emerald Street. I sold the building, I sold all of my interest. I'm not even a minority partner on it. I have nothing to do with it. I don't know if they can't figure out who the landlord is. Well, that's not me. And I'd like to also point out, the reason I'm here is not, I didn't come here for this, I came for the next one. But I find this case interesting because I don't believe they have a hardship, and I think it's not within the spirit of what has just been hashed out, as Mr. Hanson noted, recently with the city, and why they put these restrictions in place. I think I'm passionate with my feeling about that. It has nothing to do with money, but it is interesting to know that they have the one abutter that is within 50 feet or whatever it is his benefactor. So, yeah, go figure. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, if there are no other comments, let us close. Thank you very much for the presentation, and let us close the public hearing and move into some deliberations. Thank you. All right, well, let's proceed item by item and have some discussion about it. One, granting the variance would not be contrary to the public interest. Thoughts on that?
I'd just like a little clarification on, we've got two measurements involved. The 250-foot radius measurement, point-to-point radius, and lot line measurement. Which one are we actually addressing?
So the strict interpretation of the code is there's only one measurement. It's from the property line of the parcel that contains a residential dwelling to the building facade of where the charitable gaming facility is going to be located. So that's that 65, 68 foot measurement.
Okay, that helps. And is there a definition of facade in the code?
A facade is an object that provides a symbol.
Sorry about that.
Ask Siri.
Siri apparently has an opinion.
So I stand corrected. It doesn't say facade. It says building face.
Building face.
Do with that as you will.
So-
To answer the question, so facade, which again, it's not what the regulation says the front of a building or structure of any of its side that faces a public right-of-way.
Is it safe to stretch that to the actual wording in the regulation, which does not use facade.
I think the intent was to be the closest portion of the building from the property line
Okay.
of where the use is located.
So in
within.
this case, that would bring us to the rear surface of the building.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Evan, could you also elaborate on the spirit of that ordinance? That might have been lost in the current language as we read it?
Yeah,
What,
so-
what was going on, the mindset at the time it was proposed and
Yeah,
passed?
so the New Hampshire Supreme Court has provided some guidance on this, and the relationship between the first question and the second question of the 5-question criteria is very much hand in hand, because the first question is related to public good, and the core spirit of any municipality's zoning ordinance is the preservation of life, safety, and well-being. So for an application to fall down on spirit, it would also have to fall down on the first criteria. And what I mean by that is that it would have to be, the proposed use would have to be so risky, damaging, and deleterious to the public life, safety, and welfare, that it's just not appropriate.
I was hoping about the whole 250 feet. What was the spirit of the rule then? Because I think Mr. Brandon made a great point when he said that this is not on the same fairway or road that residents are on.
So whatever interpretation that I would make on that specific provision would ultimately be appealable to yourselves in this body as the sort of the arbiter of the zoning ordinance. So I hate to push your question
I
back
get it.
on you, but
Yeah, so a couple of thoughts. My initial reaction is that the 250 feet dimension, while written in the code, doesn't particularly apply specifically to this location because of a couple of things. One is that Key Road was identified as one of the locations for this use. And if you look at existing facilities on Key Road, there are a few on the opposite side of the road that are 250 feet away, but basically everything else would be within that 250 feet dimension. And so if the intent was that we should have kept it 250 feet when we allowed this use there, then we should have, then the potential thought would have been, don't allow it on that side of the road. That wasn't the case, and so I think my interpretation is that that Key Road area is then a viable area to go ahead and have this type of use allowed. And that dimension, while it is less than the required 250 feet, it certainly doesn't seem to impact or be contrary to the public interest, because all of the use is going to be down Key Road. The traffic, the customers, the parking, all of those things are going to occur in that area. And while there may be perceived impact to the property behind them, I think it's hard for us to determine what that impact is without having further study or information with regards to noise or amount of deliveries or hours of operation. So those are just some thoughts I'm having while we're going through this.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. I think for question number 1, I don't see this being a threat to public health, safety, or welfare. I do think that the road itself was identified as an appropriate area for a business like this. I think that the comment related to AC or having to air condition the place, I would argue that the theater probably has some of the same requirements to have an AC theater across all of their 6 cinemas, and the projection booths also need that same requirement. So I think that there probably already is that type of use already in place in that plaza, being done by Keene Cinemas. That would probably be mirrored for the casino itself. I am struggling more with question number 5 on the hardship. I think that I'm trying to identify what the hardship is here. And I think that's where my mind is at this point during deliberations.
All right, thank you. Let's move to number 2, just to do it all in order, and then we can talk about number 5. If the variance were granted, the spirit of the ordinance would be observed. So the one of the looking at all the criteria that a gaming facility has to go through, there's only one thing that is lacking, and it's this distance. So out of what, 15 or whatever things that they had, hoops that they had to jump through, there's only one that they actually would need some sort of special help with. I think that, that's the majority of the ordinance is being observed. And I think that changing that one thing, again, just for this one question, number 2, would be fulfilled. If it was granted, it would still follow the basic spirit of the ordinance, because, as was pointed out, all of Key Road is supposed to be fair game. So that's my feeling on that. Anyone else? Okay, number 3, granting the variance would do substantial justice. I have to admit that this is where it starts to go into places where it's much more of a judgment call and not a cut and dried sort of thing. It would allow something like this to occur, but they do have they are in existence somewhere else that, again, might not be the best location. This might be a better location, but it's hard to know whether this is doing substantial justice or not.
I guess the substantial justice phrase becomes, one of degrees. I think in the spirit of the ordinance of having Key Road identified as acceptable area for this type of facility, moving there does some measure of justice to the proposition. But again, it's a matter of degree. So that's kind of what I'm trying to balance out here with the rest of the fact pattern.
Yeah, I would agree with that line of thinking. I do think this does do some justice, whether it's substantial justice or not. I think there are degrees here. Moving this from a non-conforming part of the city to an area identified for this type of business, I do think does do justice.
Yes, and again, acknowledging that technically we're looking at just what this is doing specifically, but it's, again, 14 out of 15 criteria are okay, and the only thing that isn't is that distance. It does you do sit there and you go, well, where, as you were saying, where do you want to put this on Key Road without being much more specific? Is there an error in the zoning that it should not have been included? The north side of Key Road should not have been included in this. It should have only been the south side, and then there would have been more hurdles. In this case, there's only the one, which is because it's on the north side. Number 4, if the variance were granted, the values of surrounding properties would not be diminished.
I'm looking at our Realtor friend over there to see if he has an opinion on that.
I don't believe it would be, no.
Yeah, and I think there was discussion from the applicant with regards to property values and the abutters, and since no one has shown up to express their opinion that they're concerned about the use, then it certainly seems like they don't have concern about their property values being diminished. So I don't see it.
I agree on that.
All right, number 5, unnecessary hardship. Owing to special conditions of the property that distinguish it from other properties in the area, denial of the variance would result in unnecessary hardship because no fair and substantial relationship exists between the general public purpose of the ordinance provision and the specific application of that provision to the property. And I have to admit that this is always the hardest criteria. It's tough to say. You have to look at the property to determine what makes it unique. Is it unique? Are there other options? Quite often when we have this come before us, it's a situation where there's not another really good viable option for that space. And somebody is coming in with an idea that is thinking maybe a little bit outside the box, and that's why they have to come to us for a variance. In this case, again, I don't know, Toy City has been there for decades. So it's not like this is an empty spot. It's not like any of the spaces there are empty. So that doesn't seem to make it special in terms of you can't do anything with it other than put a gaming facility there. So thoughts on that?
My only thought is that interpretation of the hardship doesn't particularly apply to the applicant itself, but more to the community at large. I think it serves the community much better to be where it's proposed to be versus where it currently stands. So interpretation of hardship is still hard, but that's how I see it, is definitely in the better interest of the community to be where it's proposed to be versus where it currently stands.
Any other thoughts?
I've got some clarification, Evan. Maybe you can help me out on this. This is always a struggle, this particular part of. So, anyways, is it the uniqueness of the building that creates the hardship, or is it the application of these provisions under the zoning ordinance that creates the hardship on that building?
So it's the property as a whole.
Yep.
And the property is located in space.
Mm-hmm.
So there is consideration for surrounding area. You are looking at the regulations that the zoning ordinance applies to this use. And
So the ordinance is imposing a restriction or rules for the use of the property that's in existence. So property, Key Road, we know exactly what the property is. The use is the charitable gaming operation.
correct.
And the zoning ordinance is placing restrictions on that use of the property.
Yes, and those restrictions articulate multiple areas within the city that have different characteristics.
Mm-hmm.
So you are looking at the regulations that are written for multiple areas of the city, and you are applying them to this specific piece of property as it exists, as it is proposed to be. And you have to decide, and that's partially what these other criteria kind of tease out of you, like the spirit and intent, substantial justice. So what is unique about this property that warrants relief from a specific section of the zoning ordinance that is written for a much larger umbrella? And then it's your responsibility as the board to decide through these 5 criteria, is the literal interpretation of the entire ordinance subjected to this piece of property substantial justice?
Thank you.
Thank you.
So just following up on that.
Yes.
That thought and reading through the words, right, there are a lot of words there, but if we try to distill that down to understand number one here, or letter I, if you will, no fair and substantial relationship between the purpose of the, I mean, it talks about the general public purpose, but it's really about the purpose is what it boils down to, the purpose of the ordinance and the specific application. And so we're trying to determine if there's, fair and substantial relationship between those two things, the purpose and the application. And for me, as I start to read those things and try to get to the root of the question, if you will, then it talks about, there's a building in space, as you mentioned, that has already been in that location. And so to address that specific building that was already placed there, allowed to be there based on previous zoning and planning, that this dimension then becomes, a hardship against this application, in my opinion. It's not that easy, as someone may have suggested, to go and move the building or to put another building out in front of it, or to take a look at all of the different things that could occur, but we need to address the specific building that we're dealing with right now, and because of its specific location and space, the way I'm reading it right now, I think is that there is a hardship that's being placed on that one specific dimension.
That's exactly what I was trying to tease out of that, so.
Any other comments on the hardship? Because that was. Okay. All right. Any other discussion on any other criteria?
Just one more question for Evan. Evan, Key Road was identified as a road designed for this kind of use. What other roads in Keene were designated for that?
So I'm going to read use standard B. Charitable gaming facilities are defined as permitted on parcels greater than 1.25 acres in the following areas of the Commerce District. Land with frontage on West Street, west of Island Street. The principal entrance of such businesses shall face West Street, or be in a plaza where the storefront faces the parking areas that have a common boundary with West Street. 2, the land with frontage on Winchester Street, south of Island Street and north of Cornwell Drive. The storefront of such businesses shall face Winchester Street or be in a plaza where the storefront faces the parking areas that have a common boundary with Winchester Street. 3, land with frontage on Main Street, south of New Hampshire Route 101 and north of Silent Way. The storefront of such a business shall face Main Street. And then 4, land with frontage on Key Road. 5, land with frontage on Ashbrook Road. 6, land with frontage on Kit Street.
So in that reading then, Evan, when you get to Key Road, the front of the building facing Key Road, if I were to insert that in there, vanishes. And it did for the other streets you mentioned. Do you recall any reason for that? Why the language changed?
So I was not specifically involved with the crafting of this regulation. It is very obvious that the crafters and city council had concerns about the orientation of this use in certain locations and not in others, apparently, just based on what I've said.
Okay, thanks.
As a follow-up to that, does the 250-foot distance apply to all of those locations?
Yeah, that's universal.
Okay, thanks.
I have 2 quick questions. When was that ordinance put in place, the 250 foot?
So the whole thing, prior to the adoption of this ordinance, we did not have a use definition for charitable gaming facility.
Right.
This was a relatively extensive process. I believe it started at the end of 2023, and final adoption and codification of this language wasn't until either very late 2024 or beginning of 2025.
Sir, when did you purchase the building?
We began negotiations in the summer, and I think we closed at the landlord's request in December of 24.
Can you turn on your microphone, please?
Sorry about that. Just to clarify, Mr. Leroy, you and I have the same problem.
Yeah. But my question is, so I'm assuming you purchased that building with the full intent of doing this project, and at the time that ordinance wasn't in place.
Yes.
All right. So do we have no further questions? No further? Okay, let's close the deliberations, and I will entertain a motion.
For the right language.
Certainly, certainly.
It's the bottom of page 49.
So I'll make a motion to approve ZBA 2025-12 for the variance to allow a charitable gaming facility to be allowed with 250 feet of a residential, I think we need to change that, to be allowed within 250 feet of a residential dwelling for property located at 109-147 Key Road, tax map number 110-022-000-000, as shown in the application and supporting materials received on August 15th, 2025, with no conditions.
So that was Mr. Schrantz. Do I have a second?
I'll second it, Ed Guyot.
Seconded by Mr. Guyot. All right, let us go to a vote on each of the criteria. Number one, granting the variance would not be contrary to the public interest. All those in favor? That's unanimous. Number two, if the variance were granted, the spirit of the ordinance would be observed. All those in favor? Unanimous. Granting the variance would do substantial justice. All those in favor? If the variance were granted, the values of the surrounding properties would not be diminished. All those in favor? 5, unnecessary hardship. Owing to special conditions of the property that distinguish it from other properties in the area, denial of the variance would result in unnecessary hardship because no fair and substantial relationship exists between the general public purpose of the ordinance provision and the specific application of that provision to the property. All those in favor? All those opposed? The opposal is Chair Clough. And part 2, the proposed use is a reasonable one. All those in favor? And 1 opposed, so that was 4-1 and 4-1. And I don't think we have to do B. All right. So on the general, back to the top. On ZBA 2025-12, petitioners Key Road Development LLC and Anagast Companies of 1662 Elm Street, Manchester, New Hampshire, represented by Chad Brandon of Fieldstone Land Consultants of 206 Elm Street, Milford, New Hampshire, requests a variance for property located at 109-147 Key Road, tax map 110-022-000, is in the commercial district, and the petitioners are requesting a charitable gaming facility within 250 feet that is required per Article 8.3.2.1.2. III of the zoning regulations. All those in favor? And opposed? Opposed is 1, Chair Clough. It passes 4-1. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
And thank you for all your time tonight.
All right, so we have, it's just before 9. I think we could certainly get started on the next one, but I would like to take a short break, and then we can come back. So say 5 minutes, 7 at the max.
We ought to have music for these interludes.
Some elevator music?
Yeah, it's like going into the dentist's office and, yeah, what kind of music would you like?
Anything that makes the dentist as calm as possible.
Yeah. No slipping.
You don't want heavy metal. Dentist is like.
That was quick. I'm glad I took my exit early. Couple of issues here tonight. There, yeah,
No problem with you in a minute. I know you got a million things going on, so. And we're by far the littlest of everything, so it's not a big deal.
Your application is just as important as any other application.
That's fair, but there's a lot more impact with those two than this.
Everyone is here. Let us move on to our next application. So this is ZBA 2025-10, petitioner 295 Park Avenue, owned by Alan Becker, requests an enlargement or expansion of a non-conforming use for property located at 314 Park Avenue, tax map 539101000, and is in the Commerce District. The petitioner is requesting an expansion of an existing apartment from 2 bedrooms to 3, adding 175 square feet to a 900 square foot apartment per Article 27.71 of the zoning regulations. We do have a question about 27.71. That doesn't seem to be the right. It looks like it's an appeals section. Hmm.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, that does appear to be a citation error.
Okay.
However, the request stands.
Oh, I see. Approval standards 26.7.6. Maybe it would be somewhere in that area.
Well, it doesn't make sense for an appeal. It should be, let me look up the expansion of non-conforming use really quickly, Mr. Chairman.
Certainly. Yeah, it looks
Yeah,
like
so-
it's 26.7.
That is correct. So that is the application procedure for the expansion of a non-conforming use. The applicant isn't seeking relief from a section of the land development code. They are merely petitioning to go through the process articulated in 26.7.
So we're looking at 3 criteria, so to speak.
That's correct.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So, so to finish that out, it was per Article 26.7.6 of the code of the zoning regulations. All right, city staff, please.
Okay, so just to bring to the board's attention, The applicant at this point in the evening is, got two separate requests before us. For the sake of brevity, I'm going to read the background on the subject parcel just once, and then just keep that in the back of your mind as we go through the second petition request.
Thank
So
you.
the subject parcel is an existing .259 acre lot located on the western side of Park Ave, on the corner of Arlington Ave, and approximately 2,000 feet from the entrance to Wheelock Park to the south. The parcel contains an existing roughly 3,600 mixed-use building with 3 residential uses and an office use. 2 of the residential uses are located above the ground floor, and the third unit is located on the ground floor behind the office use. The property also contains a garage with loft, 4 parking spaces behind the principal building, 5 parking spaces along the Park Ave frontage, and associated site improvements. The purpose of this application is to seek approval for the expansion of an existing 900 square foot ground floor residential dwelling unit into the approximately 200 square foot office space. This would increase the bedroom count of the dwelling unit from 2 bedrooms to 3 bedrooms. The office use would be eliminated from the property. The dwelling unit is considered non-conforming as only multifamily is allowed in the Commerce zoning district, with the use standard that the dwellings be located above the ground floor. In the staff report, it includes the definition for dwelling multifamily, as well as the use standards for the multifamily use. And then the 3 criteria for the expansion of a non-conforming use are also included in the staff report, which are such expansion or enlargement would not reduce the value of any property within the zoning district, nor otherwise be injurious, obnoxious, or offensive to the neighborhood. 2, there would be no nuisance or serious hazard to vehicles or pedestrians. And 3, adequate and appropriate facilities will be provided for the proper operation of the proposed use. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman. I'd be happy to answer any questions at this time.
Thank you. Do we have any questions? Yes, Mr. Burke.
So knowing where this property is, aren't there single-family homes and multifamily homes with dwelling units on the ground floor close to this property? I think there's a house right across the street from it.
That's correct. There's a zoning map in the staff report that shows that the subject property is located in a small pocket of commerce that is almost entirely surrounded by the low-density residential zoning district.
Good, thank you. Any other questions? All right, so I invite the applicant to come to the microphone, identify yourself, your address, and yes, and make sure to see a green light there at the microphone.
All right, my name is Chad Becker. I'm representing 314 Park Ave today. So I guess, should I start by reading through this? I don't know how you guys normally the process. But I'll start by the property is located at 314 Park and is currently a 4-unit, including an office. The demand for this little office space, it's really small. There's a little bathroom in it, and it's not really all that attractive to anybody. I mean, if you take a look at it, all it is really just a storefront. The office basically became a problem because of the size, couldn't conform to being either a studio or an actual business. It came to the point where we just wanted to merge both the apartment with it, and reducing the number of units was the easiest way to do it. Let's see what else we got here. The good news is there's no external changes to anything. There's no issue with parking. You're not having any changes with water. You actually, if we were to put a business in there, you'd actually use more water than adding another person. I mean, this isn't that in-depth, this one. The big thing is there's just no changes to the site, just extending the bedroom.
Okay. All right, so if I just ask you the questions,
Yeah.
so such expansion and enlargement would not reduce the value of any other property?
Absolutely not.
Okay. Nuisance or serious hazards to vehicles or pedestrians?
No. There's actually, especially because there's probably 30 parking spots. So it's not like there's any issues. You're not going to have issues in and out. I mean, it's kind of a funky parcel of land because normally, well, it's the 314 and 310 are all together. It was purchased together from Doobie's Tire. I don't know if you guys are familiar. And it was all kind of, he just kept purchasing along that area, and it was all, and most of the abutters, I'd say, 3/4 of them are all him. And the way it kind of came out was, he just kind of was like, he was initially going to put a card store in there for like, and it just never happened for him.
Okay, and the third question was adequate and appropriate facilities will be provided for the purpose, proposed operation for the proposed use.
Mhm.
So that's true. All right, does anyone have a question for the applicant?
No.
All right, do we have, thank you very much. Do we have anybody here who is speaking out in opposition to this? Anyone speaking out in support of this? Okay, seeing none, we'll close the public portion of this and move on to our deliberations. Thank you very much. You can sit there and we'll see what happens next. All right, so number one, such expansion or enlargement would not reduce the value of the property within the zoning district nor otherwise be injurious, obnoxious, or offensive to the neighborhood. How's everyone feel about that? Pretty accurate statement.
Right.
I
See it as
agree.
an improvement.
Seems straightforward.
There will be no nuisance or serious hazard to vehicles or pedestrians. Again,
Same.
decrease, if anything, because not a business. And adequate and appropriate facilities are provided. There's already a bathroom there and plenty of parking and everything. All right. So when we have if I could ask staff, how do we vote on something like this? Do we go through each of these three criteria? It's
Yeah.
a little different, but,
It is, the questions are different, but I'd say your process should be exactly the same.
okay.
So yeah, treat it just like you would any other.
Okay. All right, so I'll take a motion to approve this application, if somebody wants to read through it.
Make a motion to approve ZBA-2025-10 for the expansion of a non-conforming use to allow a ground floor dwelling to expand into an existing office space for property located at 314 Park Ave, tax map number 539-010-000-000, as shown in the application, and supporting materials received on August 13th, 2025, with no conditions.
All right, and a second? So that was Mr. Burke, and then seconded by Mr. Schrantz. All right, on the first question. Such expansion or enlargement would not reduce the value of any property within the zoning district, nor otherwise be injurious, obnoxious, or offensive to the neighborhood. All in favor of that statement? That was unanimous, thank you. Number two, there will be no nuisance or serious hazard to vehicles or pedestrians. All in favor of that statement? Again, unanimous. And number three, adequate and appropriate facilities, i.e. water, sewer, streets, parking, et cetera, will be provided for the proper operation of the proposed use. Staple in the way. All those who agree with that one? All right. And on the final question to approve ZBA 2025-10 for the expansion of a non-conforming use to allow a ground floor dwelling to expand into an existing office space for property located at 314 Park Ave, tax map 539-010-0000000, as shown in the application and supporting materials received on August 13th, 2025, with no conditions. All those in favor? And that's unanimous. All right, thank you very much for that. And moving on to our next one. ZBA 2025-11, petitioner 295 Park Ave, owned by Alan Becker, requests a variance for property located at 314 Park Ave, tax map 539-101-000, is in the Commerce District. The petitioner is requesting a variance to convert a garage into a single-family home per Article 5.1.5 of the zoning regulations. Let's hear from staff first, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, .0259, 0.259 acre lot located on the western side of Park Ave. Purpose of this application is to seek approval for a variance to allow the conversion of an existing detached garage with loft into a single dwelling unit. The applicant intends to convert both the ground floor and the loft into the unit. The single dwelling unit is a detached structure. This single dwelling unit in a detached structure is considered a single-family use, which is not normally permitted within the Commerce District. So again, some applicable definitions: dwelling single-family, a freestanding building containing only one dwelling unit on a single lot, which is designed, occupied, or intended for the occupancy of one family. Dwelling above floor, dwelling unit that is located on the second story or higher of a building that is above ground. And something to consider in tandem with this, so the zoning ordinance allows for multiple principal uses in any district within the city except the residential zoning districts. So this parcel is zoned commerce, so it is allowed to have a multifamily residential use in one building as a principal use, and it is allowed to have another separate detached principal use on the property. So that is allowed. It's the specific use for the single family. That is what the applicant is seeking relief from this evening, because the single family use is not allowed in the Commerce District.
Okay,
And
thank you.
That's all I have.
Any questions for Mr. Clements? Okay, let us hear from the applicant again.
My name is Chad Becker. Do I go through this all again? Do it all again. Okay, just making sure. My name is Chad Becker, representing 314 Park Ave in Keene. We're talking about potentially turning it into a single-family home. Basically, the property was obtained from Gary Doobie, and he was using it as, it was zoned commercial because he was using it as tire storage. And that was why there was no, that's why initially he didn't try to make it an apartment. Our goal was to turn it into an apartment and we're not changing anything to the structure. All we want to do is have the second floor of it become a one-bedroom. It already has water and sewage. It's all there. It's not hooked up. Everything's brought to the building. There is nothing else at this point. It's just the shell that was basically storage. Both floors were. One was for, I think, his daughter, regardless. Anyways, so we're hoping that because it is based on where it is on, it's really more on Arlington Ave. It's faced directly at the low-density zone, that it's close enough back there that we thought that we would attempt to try. It's honestly closer to the low-density zone than it is the actual commercial, which is 2 buildings over. Again, we're not trying to change anything on the outside. We're going to keep the garage on the base floor, a garage, and do all the applicable, the goal would be to do the applicable, just going in there and making sure it's insulated adequately on the basement and upstairs, and basically converting it to the single family. So should I go through the criteria? Okay, that's what I was going to do next. Granting the variance would not be contrary to public interest because be trying to create quality housing, knowing that there's a shortage in the area, and we feel that this is going to be a quality, nice apartment for the area. 2, if the variances were granted, the spirit of the ordinance would be observed because we just felt that because there was already multifamilies on the site that we could, and it's in the backside of the low-density area, or a backside of the commercial, but close enough to the low density that we felt that it was applicable. Granting the variance would do substantial justice because the community is currently, again, I read that there was a lack of housing, and we felt that adding safe, quality housing would be worth it for the town of Keene. If the variances were granted, the values of the surrounding properties would not be diminished because I'm trying to invest in the property and the area by not updating the existing footprint. All we would do is update the inside. And it's unique because it now puts a quality housing on a commercial lot, which I found interesting. 5, unnecessary hardship. Owning to special conditions of the property that distinguish it from other properties in the area. Denial of the variance would result in unnecessary hardship because no fair and substantial relationship exists between the general public purposes of the ordinance provision and the specific application of the provision of the property because the intent of the garage was to house an automotive facility. The purpose is now is to do a single family, 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom, which would realistically be a better scenario than keeping the tires and stuff because it's less impact on the environment. The current loft space is not large enough to house. Current loft space. Handwriting is terrible. I apologize. I'm gonna skip that part. All we want to do is add living space to the upper level, and initially we had looked at it as if we were going to do a 2-bedroom, but we felt that it was more attractive to do a 1-bedroom with a nice garage. And the whole point of it is to keep with the uniformity of the neighborhood, and we were, like I said, we were hoping to turn that little back area into more low-density housing. The proposed is a reasonable one because there is single-family residence right next to the housing, and it's all up and down Arlington Ave. B, explain how, if the criteria in subparagraph A are not established, an unnecessary hardship will be deemed to exist, and if, only if, owing to specific conditions of the property that distinguish it from other properties in the area, the property cannot reasonably be used in strict conformance with the ordinance, and a variance is therefore necessary to enable a reasonable use of it. Just because the neighborhood is a combination of residential, commercial, surrounded by low density and single-family use, we would like to just add the single-family home to match the rest of the area.
All right, thank you.
Sorry if it was a little repetitive.
All right, is there anyone here in opposition who would like to speak? Yes, Mr. Towsley.
Toby Towsley, 500 Washington Street in Keene.
Check and make sure the mic's on.
I believe it is. I can hear my echo.
Okay, excellent.
So I'm not opposed to what the gentleman's trying to do. I'm opposed to how it's happening. And I'm here to be on record in hopes that staff will be directed to have applicants actually file for zoning changes instead of all these variances. And the reason this is in the Commerce District is because it was created Commerce because of the store that was there when I was a kid. And that was the only reason it became Commerce. Well, clearly this is a residential neighborhood. It clearly should be residential use. It clearly should be this. I get it, but it should be changed to a residential district. And that's the way this should be done. That's what should have happened with the Roosevelt School. It should have been put in for high density residential. And if this was in a residential use, he could go do probably a cottage court on this. And so I'm just in opposition to how these things go about. And I know it's a little bit cumbersome to do that, but I'm in hopes by me being vocalizing on this, that in the future, staff will guide people to change these districts, because when the next owner of this comes along, it'll be in the correct district. Because when the next owner comes, or if he goes to do something in the future, he's got to jump through all these hoops again. And I just think some of the stuff needs to be cleaned up. So, like I said, I'm not against the project. The method it's going at. I hope that helps. Thank you.
Yes, I appreciate that. Okay, do we have any other comments all right. So, is there anything you would want to say in response to that? Okay. All right, then let us close the hearing unless anyone has any questions.
But I was
perfect.
actually, thank you, Mr. Towsley. I was gonna ask the same question. I was gonna ask, did you go that route? Did you try to have it rezoned versus coming to?
Have I?
Yes.
I have not. So this is the way we were directed by, we came in and asked what we should do, and we were directed this route first.
And secondly, as far as I understand it, the variance is because it's a single family, whereas a multifamily would have not needed a variance? Am I hearing that correctly?
That's correct. So multifamily, which is one building, 3 units or more, above the ground floor, is permitted in the Commerce District. That's why the previous application needed to take place, because that ground floor unit is legal non-conforming. So it's the expansion from that dwelling into the office is an expansion of the non-conforming ground floor dwelling. Doing a map amendment the only option for a map amendment would be to change the whole parcel from commerce to low density, where only single family would be allowed, and the multi-tenant, multifamily building would not be allowed.
Thank you. Any other?
Can I have a quick follow-up on that?
Certainly.
So you didn't look at also just making that a multifamily either?
It's not that big. So it's a garage, and it's basically, let's say, I think it's 20 by 22. And the building, so the upstairs would be the apartment, and the downstairs would be significantly more expensive to convert into another apartment. And it wasn't worth it, cash benefit-wise. So we decided we just wanted to do the one.
And you would have needed a variance regardless,
Yeah.
either way, if you wouldn't, Evan?
Yeah, because even just to keep the garage and put the dwelling on the second floor, they would need 2 more dwellings to be multifamily to then be conforming. I will just like to note to Mr. Towsley's comment. He makes a very good point. And staff is looking at these sort of neighborhood nodes, this is a prime example of one of several that are located within the city, to, I think, speaking plainly, better figure out what the community wants to happen in these places than what is currently allowed versus not allowed. We're at the very beginning of that conversation with the adoption of the new master plan update coming shortly. So that is definitely on staff's radar, but not something that's going to be happening soon. So that's why we're here this evening.
Yes, and my 2 cents on that is that this is like my 4th year on the board, and quite often we encounter things that you just sit there and go, this shouldn't have had to come to us, but it is the only way to get it to move in a timely manner. like this year, because things like this do take a little bit of time, and you know, people sitting on a property that they're not able to make any money on, or they're not able to convert it to housing, or I mean, the one of the biggest things is converting office space to housing. We're finding that all over the place, and so many places, so many districts were rezoned to office space, and we're actually going backwards, rezoning them or creating variances, allowing more housing in places that are houses, but they were offices. And so it's like we're just doing a flip of a certain, you know, of a certain progression that occurred that is now regressing, and we're getting a different progression. So that's really what the ZBA is here for, is to try and, I see it as we're trying to be as quickly adaptable to situations where it's going to take longer for the codes to catch up. So ADUs, things like that, you know, we were encountering questions about that, and now we don't really have them anymore because they have been addressed. So that's an example of it. But thank you. That is a really good point, that we wouldn't have to be here if all the stuff was zoned beautifully. Okay, so now, since I had my say, we will close the public hearing and go into deliberations. All right. So, number one, granting the variance would not be contrary to the public interest. Comments on that? Thoughts?
Yeah, I don't think it's contrary to the public interest. It's off of Arlington Ave, that's single-family homes all up and down that street. So I think it meets the character of the neighborhood.
Yeah. Yeah, it looks like, I mean, it's surrounded on three sides by, it's an outlier, though, yeah. Okay, two, if the variance are granted, the spirit of the ordinance would be observed. Everyone's pretty much
Agree with that.
in agreement with that. Granting the variance would do substantial justice.
Yeah, I think the applicant's explanation about needing more housing, it sort of supports the idea of social justice and serving a need.
And, you know, it's an existing building, you're not having to build anything there, and, you know, using it for tire storage doesn't make an awful lot of sense for someone who isn't selling tires. Okay, if the variance were granted, the values of the surrounding properties would not be diminished. Everything's pretty similar, so that would be a pretty true statement also. Unnecessary hardship. Owing to special conditions of the property that distinguish it from other properties in the area, denial of the variance would result in unnecessary hardship because no fair and substantial relationship exists between the general public purpose of the ordinance provision and the specific application of that provision to this property. So the situation there is, again, it's a weird, the zoning area is very odd, and it doesn't fit that. You know, commercial, it doesn't fit in that respect, and so what he's being asked to do wouldn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah, I think on this one, this is the hard one, right? Hardship.
Right.
And because, I mean, we can talk about it being weird and weird zoning, but it is zoned in a certain fashion.
Yep.
And the other four questions, I think, sort of fly right by, but here's where we get into the interesting conversations for the zoning board, right? All right, is it truly a hardship? Because the building was constructed for storage purposes. And so it certainly could be a storage unit going forward, but, you know, is it a hardship to not allow for it to be converted to single family? I'm not sure I know the answer to this, but as I've been thinking about it, I would say that, yes, it is a hardship because the need of the housing is greater than the need of the storage, especially for the investor in the property. And so his economic ability to recoup his investment is greater enhanced by putting in housing. So there's multiple reasons that it becomes a hardship, and so I think that it's there's valid cause.
And then 2 is the proposed use is reasonable. And that's, seems to be pretty reasonable. All right, so I will entertain a motion from someone for this. That's right, get out your,
I'll do it up. So I make a motion that the board approve ZBA 2025-11. Petitioner 295 Park Ave, owned by Alan Becker, requests variance for the property located at 314 Park Avenue, tax map 539101000, and is in the commercial district. And to allow the conversion, convert a garage into a single-family home per Article 5.1.5 of the zoning regulations.
that was Mr. Guyette. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
All right, Mr. Leroy. All right. First criteria, granting the variance would not be contrary to the public interest. All those in favor? Unanimous. 2, if the variance were granted, the spirit of the ordinance would be observed. All in favor? Unanimous. Granting the variance would do substantial justice. All in favor? 4, if the variance were granted, the values of the surrounding properties would not be diminished. All in favor? 5, unnecessary hardship. Owing to special conditions of the property that distinguish it from other properties in the area, denial of the variance would result in unnecessary hardship because no fair and substantial relationship exists between the general public purposes of the ordinance provision and the specific application of that provision to the property. All in favor? And finally, the proposed use is a reasonable one. In favor? And on the main motion, yes.
Can I get a clarification? I just want to make sure that we've got the right motion for this one. Ed, can you just confirm that the motion was on page 82?
Well, I just found it. So I can restate my motion if that's appropriate to the exact wording proposed. I mean, I think I got it overall, but.
Yeah, I don't know if it's necessary to get it straight, but because it.
Well, if we get it
wasn't-
straight for the final vote, would that count for the whole thing, or do we have to go through the, so,
So let me.
Okay, fair enough.
yeah.
read it.
Can you turn on your microphone, please?
Sorry. That we approve ZBA 2025-11 for the variance to allow a single-family use for property located at 314 Park Ave, tax map number 539-010-000-000, as shown in the application and supporting materials received on August 13, 2025, with no conditions.
And final vote on the main, on the main motion. All those in favor? And that's unanimous. Thank you all very, very much. Thank you. All right, closing things out. Do we have? You're all set. Yes, sir. Okay, do we have any new business from staff?
No new business.
Okay. All right, then let us adjourn the meeting.
Yeah,
Thank
the
you.
only- The only thing I just want to remind everybody is the special meeting on September 15th.
Correct.
Same time, same location. We've got 5 more applications to go through.
All right. Yep. All right, see you all on the 15th.